Nick Abbot on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Simon Marks is on the line from Washington, D.C. Hello, Simon.
Evening, Nick.
Now, this is something that I am unfamiliar with, but apparently it comes out with, to not much comment in each administration. It's a thing called the National Security Strategy, and just basically puts on paper what we already know about the priorities of the administration. Now, the Trump's administration has just released their National Security Strategy, and it did not go without comment at all, did it?
Indeed. I mean, I cannot underscore how important this is. This is a 29-page document that the State Department released on Friday. It has a 2-page introduction by President Donald Trump. Absolutely, it's got the president's imprimatur. And it means that effectively, when European leaders now gather in London in a few hours' time, they are going to be waking up to the fact that for the first time in 80 years, the United States no longer has their backs. This document is a total clarion explanation of Donald Trump's priorities in foreign policy, his flaying of Europe, his determination to try and grease the wheels for what he referred to in this document as patriotic European parties. In other words, Nigel Farage and Reform UK in Britain, Marine Le Pen and her movement in France, Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. This is a document that wants to see as official government policy far-right political parties taking power in Europe. It says that Europe has atrophied because its member states have allowed unrestrained immigration to take place that is going to create what it describes as civilizational erasure of the European Union and everything that it stands for. It says that within a matter of years, what it refers to as non-European populations will be in the majority in so many member states of NATO in Europe that those populations won't have any interest in NATO's collective defence. So it basically flushes the idea of the transatlantic alliance, the NATO alliance, essentially saying it doesn't really matter what we do because in a few years' time it's going to be deemed irrelevant by the majority non-European populations of many European countries. And what is so extraordinary about this document is that it only uses the word democracy 3 times, and the first time it uses it is on page 16. Now, if you go back to all previous American presidents and their national security strategies, certainly since Ronald Reagan, they've all been couched in those Reagan terms of the United States being a shining beacon, the city on the hill, the beacon of democracy, protecting and advancing freedom around the world, speaking out against dictators and the gulags that they run. This document has none of that underpinning its national security strategy. Indeed, it actually goes so far as to say, and this is a quote, "We seek good relations and peaceful commercial relations with the nations of the world without imposing on them democratic or other social change that differs widely from their traditions and histories." And that is one of many reasons why I suspect this weekend there's been an open bar at the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov, in a statement over the weekend, said that this new American national security strategy is largely consistent with Moscow's vision of the future, which really, again, underscores what a stunning departure this is from orthodox American foreign policy.
Yeah, it's like Stephen Miller's brain threw up on 30 pieces of paper. One of the things it talks about is Europe. I mean, you've referenced this, Europe facing a civilizational erasure. I mean, that's white replacement theory, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely. It is white replacement theory. It is this theory that's being advanced here now of re-immigration. I mean, actually, kicking everybody out, denaturalizing even American citizens here that have been born in other countries and have secured American citizenship. We saw just astonishing reports coming out of Boston this weekend. There was a citizenship ceremony taking place in Faneuil Hall in Boston, one of the hallmarks of America's struggle for independence, a really iconic location in Boston that visitors always go to visit. And as the people were gathering to take their oaths of allegiance to the United States, their citizenship oaths, various officials started calling out the names of various countries and said that any foreign nationals from those countries needed to stand up and leave the hall. And those people discovered that they suddenly were not going to be naturalized as American citizens. This is the kind of behavior that this national security strategy wants to see in Europe. And, in a way, I mean, as unprecedented and in many ways horrifying as this document is, in a way, it's also extremely clarifying. I mean, there can be no one in Number 10 or the Foreign Office today who can read this document and think that it is possible to continue down the path of pretending that any kind of normal diplomatic relationship is going to be possible with this American government. And that, I think, is one of the reasons why the French President Emmanuel Macron and others are now hastily heading to London. They were already deeply alarmed over everything that they'd heard from the White House over the last few days regarding the Ukraine negotiation. And this document, again, underscores the fact that Donald Trump is more than ready to capitulate to Russia on Ukraine. He basically puts Ukraine in this document on notice that the Trump administration finds itself at odds with European officials who hold unrealistic expectations for the war. This is a total restatement of American foreign policy. And as I say, it's only 29 pages long, which is ludicrously short. I actually got to the end of it and thought that my computer had not loaded the rest of it. So I refreshed the page, and it just ends basically in the middle of various claims about Africa, insisting that the United States essentially wants to march into Africa and take away all of its rare earth and other valuable minerals. I thought there must be more to this than just these 29 pages. There isn't. But as I say, it is only 29 pages, and everyone should get onto the White House website and read it, because it's an absolutely astonishing read, including one section where they're talking about Ukraine, which, a bit like that 28-point peace plan, read to me almost as though it had been put through some kind of a Google translation bit of software from Russian to English. Yeah. There's one section that is just very, it sounds very Russian.
Yeah. And, of course, a part of this document is that the U.S. seeks to re-establish strategic stability with Russia. That's their phrase. And as you've said, Russia, Putin, he said that all of this is largely consistent with Moscow's vision. And on the other hand, it seems to call for the toppling of all of the centre-left and centre-right governments of Europe.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. It says that it finds optimism in the rise of what it refers to as patriotic parties. Now, obviously, when it talks about patriotic parties, it doesn't mean Keir Starmer's government. It means Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And, you and I have been talking about this for weeks. We talked about this around the time of the state visit, when it was absolutely apparent that the second that visit was over and Donald Trump left town with the picture of him and the Queen in his breast pocket, that he was immediately going to begin the process of undermining the Prime Minister and trying to help Nigel Farage win the keys to number 10 in the next presidential election. And this document says it in black and white. I mean, I suspect the Foreign Secretary will say, well, Labour, of course, is a patriotic party. And, but that is clearly not the kind of political party that Donald Trump means to endorse here.
No. I mean, the way they put it was, U.S. policy is to prioritise resistance to Europe's current trajectory.
totally. Exactly. And where do you find that resistance? You find it among the far-right parties, not just in the UK, but in other countries all over the European Union.
Yeah, and it's a litany of anti-woke, fake Christianity panic about the erasure of Western culture, and also, much expectedly, to increase America's influence over South America, to take control of the Panama Canal, bring down the government of Venezuela, the country,
yes,
coincidentally, with by far the largest oil reserves in the world, and essentially update the 200-odd-year-old Monroe Doctrine to essentially declare Latin America off limits to anybody else.
Yes, absolutely. This is a restatement of the Monroe Doctrine of 1823, which basically provided precedent for America's territorial expansion. I mean, you read this document and you come to the conclusion that Greenland is although it's not mentioned, is definitely going to be on the table. He's definitely in the business of territorial expansion. But what the Monroe Doctrine also did was to declare the Western Hemisphere to be America's zone of influence. They described this document as the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. But the idea that the Monroe Doctrine is being revived by this president, who, of course, has spoken about Canada becoming America's 51st state, taking over Greenland, building Trump Gaza, wants to go in and essentially oust President Nicolas Maduro from power in Venezuela in order to take control of the country's massive oil reserves, or at least force Nicolas Maduro to agree to some kind of economic cooperation pact that will see the United States getting its hands on Venezuelan oil. These are the drivers now behind President Trump's foreign policy, and this is no longer debatable because it's there in black and white.
Yes, and particularly they have enmity for the concept of a European Union, don't they? They want to split the various nations into their back to their individual countries, because I would imagine the European Union presents a strong force against America. I mean, the US, it seems to me, they can't stand that social democracies actually work, that you can have universal health care, you can have state support when you are at your most needy, that a winner-takes-all economy doesn't make a happier country.
Yeah, and it is not coincidental, Nick, that this weekend, in the immediate aftermath of the publication of this document, Elon Musk, former player in Donald Trump's inner circle, has been on a tear this weekend on X, insisting that the European Union should be abolished. He, of course, doesn't like the regulation that it's bringing to his businesses. Christopher Landau, the Deputy Secretary of State, this is the man who goes to America's airports to welcome white Afrikaners as refugees when they arrive in the United States, while this country is closing its doors to all other refugees. He's been in Brussels for a NATO ministerial meeting, and he took to X this weekend to say the US has long failed to address the glaring inconsistency between its relations with NATO and the EU. He says these are almost all the same countries in both organisations. When these countries wear their NATO hats, they insist that transatlantic cooperation is the cornerstone of mutual security. But when they wear their EU hats, they pursue all sorts of agendas that are utterly adverse to US interests and security. He says this inconsistency cannot continue. We cannot pretend we are partners while these nations allow the EU's unelected, undemocratic and unrepresentative bureaucracy to pursue policies of civilizational suicide.
Yeah. Just when you thought it couldn't get worse, it just did. Simon, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for that. Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent there.